Arturia have updated their FX suite, so in the next couple of videos we're going to go over the main tools that they've updated to and see if they're worth you also picking up the update. So in this video we're going to focus on the two new bus tools, and we'll have a look at them on a mix of a new release which is coming out at the end of the month, and it was released with DistroKid. They let me get my music out to all of the major distributors, and they do that at a price an independent artist can easily afford. If you're ready to get your music or beats out there and want to release an unlimited amount of music each year, check the link in the description below for a discount off of your first year of unlimited distribution with DistroKid. So the first new bus tool, but really I'd say it's more of a mix tool that they've introduced, is the Bus Exciter, and this is basically a modernization of the FX Audio Exciter, which you've probably seen the Waves version, which looks like this from years and years ago, and they've updated a bunch of the features and made it a more ergonomic set to use, and very useful tool. So let's just mute the bus speak and we can have a little look at how it works. You can see the presets at the top. We can click on the presets and we've got a whole bunch of different options. Each one's got fairly minimal settings because it's really about you tweaking it to the particular audio that you've got working. But I started off with a preset just to get an idea of it, and then moved around from there. We've got a nice A/B option, so if you set something up and you wanted to switch to A/B, we can do that. The majority of what we care about happens in this part of the GUI here, and with our controls at the bottom we've got the big bass, exciter and output. Basically your two lines in here, they correspond to the big bass being the reddish pink and the purplish colour being the exciter themselves. Now what's nice with these is they're way more adjustable than on the legacy version of the tool slash the plugins, so we can do a lot more with it. First off, we can solo what we're doing, so big bass up here, it's got a nice solo option. So I can hear what's going on with that. And I can move it relevant to that area. As well as we can adjust the Q, so we've got the big bass resonance and how much of an area it's affecting. Now, as you can see, there's not a control for that down here, it's only up here. You use the mouse wheel to adjust it, or click and drag. Now while it's soloed, if we push up the drive, we can hear and see what it's doing. As currently you can see, these are the harmonics of the track, and these are the added harmonics highlighted in the red. Now we've driven it a lot more, there's a lot more harmonics being added at that frequency point. Now frequency point we can move here, but we can also just grab it here. So if we see the key point area we want to be, we can just move it to it and really over enhance that and adjust the resonance depending on what we're trying to do. If we're taking drive too far, it does glow red for us, but that might be exactly the effect we're after. In this case, just sort of a subtle add. I did it quite high up in the 200 Hz range. Then we've got an overall mix control for how much we're going to blend that in, and just a touch here was all that I decided to do. One other thing we can do, we've got a saturation option here. We can set the saturation profile rather than the drive. And we've got the mono option. Currently it monos big bass. That means when you've got a big driving signal like this, it sums that to mono. We can click on here and make it so it sums all the bass to mono, or switch it off entirely. If we solo the exciter now, you can see that shows us all the harmonics and anything being added in the bluish purple colour instead. Exactly the same principles apply. We can adjust that resonance, apply our harmonics rather than our drive here. And we've got slope and stereo adjustments instead, so we can saturate it completely mono or in stereo by 200 and add a lot of spread to it. We do something like 150 here, adds a little bit of saturated spread and expansion to the track overall. And then our harmonics, the more we push it up, the more harmonics generated in that area till it becomes way too much. About 1.5 here. Then mixing it in, so a wet dry mix can be overdone very, very quickly, so I found really subtle amounts the best way to do it. the output equalizer. In this, I decided to balance the track by bringing some of the lows back out. So here we go with the whole track. I've actually taken the lows down by 3 dB. I've taken the high down by 1.5. Just adding all these extra harmonics lifted the track overall up, and this felt like it was the best match for where it should be. And we've got a wet dry mix. What's a really nice touch is if we want to hear what we're doing, we can press wet only, and it will now only give us our harmonics back. So let's bring our mix back in up here. I said we're around 23 before, and we're just adding some width to this area here. Some extra harmonics. And we take wet off. Now we can hear what we're doing. Currently we're 100% dry with 20% wet. As you can see, we can push more and more of the wet signal in. Just adding a touch of it. Seems to be the nicest way to go. Quick A and B. It's a useful tool not just for the bus, but for just about anything that you want to bring some levels in, bring a bit of stereo width in by adding extra harmonics. Really useful on things like drum buses, bass buses. Instead of like my complex widening bass, I could use this and achieve almost the same results by just doing a couple of little adjustments and maybe doing a bit of reverb to get that spreading in there as well. So really great times over there. Now the other one they've added is very much orientated at loudness, and that is peak bus, which is just here, and that is bus peak, which looks like this. What we are here is a soft clipper. I'm not going to dive massively into soft clipping as I did a video literally last week, so I will link that on the screen that explains all the benefits and why we use soft clipping in mastering so much currently. But very simply, again, we've got our A/B options up here, and we grabbed safe true peak so I could get an idea of how it ran. We've got input signal push over here, so we pushed it up by 8 dB because by default would be at 0. It's going to be like this. We're able to lift that up by 8 decibels. Really push the signal. On the left-hand slide, on the left-hand side, we've got the clipper. Very simple on-off, whether we decide to have the clipper in or not. And we've pushed that up by 0.5 dB, and we're just taking off the absolute peak transients in the track here. We've turned off the auto knee, and we've gone for a set knee here, but it's 9.5 dB basically. And we've changed our character curve to be a lot more curved rather than kind of like a straight hard limiter. And you can see that's represented here with the limiter where it's just a straight angle. We've then got the limiter side, and that's going by minus 0.2 dB, and that is just absolute hard limiting, 12 millisecond release, super quick, and it just hits that wall. We can change the character so it works a little bit more like a soft compressor, but boom, we just got nice hard, hits the wall, and that's the end of it. Now some important settings for here. At the bottom, we've got basically our aliasing amount and things. Aliasing can be very important in a soft clipper, as demonstrated in the clipping video, if you want to go watch that beforehand. In here we've got tracking, mixing and mastering. They're basically CPU heavier as you go down, mastering being the nicest audible quality for me listening. I couldn't hear a difference between that and render, despite the fact that when we pop it to render, it jumps up in CPU by about 5 times the amount. We can just drop that back into mastering, despite the fact that when we drop it into render, it jumps up by at least 3 times the amount in CPU usage. I couldn't hear a difference though. So popping it in mastering, absolutely fine. Now you may have noticed over here in input, we have something called link tone, but there's nothing on here that talks about tone whatsoever. And I had to go and look and really play about in the manual to sort of figure this out. There's a menu here, which gives us some tonality guides as well. We've got a bass and treble split out. And we can basically adjust the bass and treble tonality as well, so we can then link the input to the tone as well. And there's separate gain reduction meters for the tone up here as well. Take the treble here, and depending on the frequency and how it's pushed, and how the gain reduction is affected, adjust the overall tone. So as you can hear, we're adding a lot of saturation in and around here. Now if we bring it down to 1.5K and bring the gain down a lot, we can really hear what it's doing. But that could be used very subtly just to give us another little edge in the loudness aspect of things. Or maybe very subtly applying it, so in the tops here, just capturing these real extremes. And maybe we could utilize it to even add gain. I wouldn't necessarily use it for that, but more to do this kind of adjustment here. Get a last little bit of loudness, we're then pushing back up 1.5 dB here with the clipper. Even 1 dB. As you can see, overall our gain reduction, we're taking off more than I would necessarily want to now, which is why I left it at about 0.5. I wouldn't even bring this as far. Maybe something like that. And we're able to quite comfortably add 8 dB of loudness. And then over here on our right, we've got some pretty useful metering. Now if we link tone, when we adjust this, our tonal controls also adjusted with it, which is nice. If we dial this in and then we wish to add and push our gain a bit more, we can do so now. We've got some useful metering over here on the right hand side. We can get our overall gain. Let's say we're aiming for CD, switch it to CD, it will give us a -9 LUFS marker. We can see that we're right up there in that department. Very loud mix. If we want to reference what we're doing, we've got equal loudness as well. So now we can hear what it's doing in relation to how loud it was prior for a good A and B. Really useful to be able to hear if we're detrimentally affecting the sound by having it gained up by so much and trying to push it in such a high LUFS direction, to be able to have that equal loudness. And those are two of the new plugins introduced in Arturia's new suite. The other two really being FX focused, and we'll look at those in another video.